Well, get ready to hop off because today's deep dive is all about escaping that mental mayhem. It's Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now.
The Power of Now.
But
Classic.
Totally. And we're going to explore how finding that inner peace is less about, achieving Zen master status.
Right.
And more about how we think about time itself.
It's amazing how Tolle connects these simple ideas of being present with these really profound insights about who we are, our relationship with time, even spirituality.
And we're breaking it all down, so it's not just some abstract, thought-provoking stuff, but things you can actually use in your everyday life.
Exactly. Practical insight.
Right, because let's be real, who hasn't felt totally weighed down by their own thoughts?
It's a universal struggle.
And what's interesting is that Tolle himself wasn't always this mindfulness guru. The book actually starts with his own struggles, feeling incredibly unhappy, almost like he was trapped by his own mind.
It's true. He describes this period of his life where he felt lost, even worthless. And I think that's what makes his message resonate so strongly. He gets it. He understands that feeling of being completely overwhelmed by your own negative thoughts. That's why he dedicated his life to helping others find a way out.
So that's where this whole power of now idea comes in.
Exactly. His whole premise is that most of our suffering comes from either dwelling on the past or constantly worrying about the future.
Guilty as charged.
Right. But the thing is, the only reality we truly have is this present moment.
Okay, that makes sense in theory. But realistically, how do you just be present?
Yeah.
Life doesn't stop because we decide to get Zen for a minute. We have jobs, deadlines, relationships, anxieties.
We're preaching to the choir. It's not about pretending those things don't exist.
So then, how do we handle it?
That's where Tolle introduces this idea of the pain body.
Pain body. Sounds unpleasant.
Well, it's not exactly a picnic. Think of it this way. Imagine carrying around a backpack. But this backpack is filled with rocks. Every resentment, fear, insecurity you've ever felt, that's your pain body.
Ouch. No wonder we're always exhausted.
Right, it's heavy stuff. And this pain body, it's formed from our past experiences, and it just feeds off this negative energy.
So you're saying it's like emotional baggage we drag around?
Precisely. And here's the thing. Because it's rooted in the past, it can be triggered by things in the present. Something as small as a coworker snapping at you could bring back this flood of emotions from a completely different experience.
So how do we ditch the rocks? Are we talking intense therapy, reliving every bad experience?
Tolle isn't saying we need to analyze our pasts to death or anything. It's more about becoming aware of the pain body.
Okay.
Recognizing it's there. That's the first step to breaking free from its grip.
So instead of being ruled by these feelings, we start to see them and realize we have a choice.
Exactly. We have power over how we respond.
So what choices are we talking about here? What can we actually do when we feel that pain body creeping in?
Tolle suggests we have 3 options. First, we can try to remove ourselves from the situation that's causing us pain. If that's possible, of course.
Makes sense. Get out of the situation if you can.
Second, we can try to change the situation. If we can't just walk away, maybe there's something we can do to improve things.
Right, so take action if you can.
And finally, if neither of those options are possible, there's always acceptance.
Acceptance? Isn't that a little passive, though?
It might sound that way, but Tolle's idea of acceptance isn't about giving up or resigning ourselves to misery. It's about choosing not to be ruled by our pain body. It's about acknowledging the situation without letting it control us.
I see. So it's more about finding a sense of peace within the situation, even if you can't change the situation itself.
Exactly. It's an internal shift in perspective.
That makes a lot of sense. But how do we actually start living more in the present? It's easy to say, be mindful, be present, but how do we actually do it with, a brain that's basically hardwired to overthink everything?
It's about shifting our focus,
Okay, where are we shifting to?
Tolle talks about finding these little pockets of presence in everyday life just by paying attention to the world around us.
Give me an example. I'm all about actionable steps here.
He uses this example of really seeing a tree.
Seeing a tree?
Yeah, not just glancing at it as you walk by, but really taking it in.
Oh.
Noticing its shape, its colors, the texture of the bark.
Okay, I'll admit, I don't usually stop to admire bark texture. What's so significant about that?
It's not about the tree itself. It's about consciously choosing to engage your senses in the present moment. Instead of letting your mind race ahead or dwell on something that already happened, you're fully present with the tree.
So instead of stressing about my to-do list on my way to work, I should be stopping to smell the roses, or in this case, admire the oaks.
It's not about ignoring your responsibilities, but it's about recognizing that even for a few seconds, shifting your attention to something outside of your own head, it can make a difference.
It's like hitting the reset button.
Exactly. And Tolle connects this to the importance of spending time in nature. Watching a river flow, noticing how the light changes throughout the day. There's this natural rhythm to the world, and it can help us reconnect with our own sense of presence.
It reminds me of those times when you get so engrossed in something, maybe you're painting, playing music, whatever, and you completely lose track of time.
Exactly. You tap into that flow state where you're fully immersed in the present moment.
And the best part is you don't need to be like some kind of artist to experience it. It's about finding those activities that bring us joy, that allow us to be present without even trying.
Right. It's about being fully engaged in what you're doing, whether it's painting or washing dishes.
Okay, so we've talked about observing our surroundings, but what about those times when you're just bombarded with thoughts, emotions? How do you deal with all the noise inside your head?
Tolle uses this analogy. I love it. He compares our minds to a crowded train station.
Okay, I can see that.
All these thoughts and feelings are like trains rushing through.
Yeah.
And we have a choice.
We do.
We can either jump on each train as it arrives, getting swept away in all the chaos,
Or
we can choose to stay on the platform, just observing the trains without getting on board.
So it's not about stopping the thoughts altogether, but more about choosing which ones we engage with.
Precisely.
Right.
And that's where mindfulness comes in. It's about acknowledging those thoughts and feelings without judgment, and then choosing to redirect your attention to the present moment.
Easier said than done, though, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It takes practice.
Yeah.
But the more we do it, the better we get at recognizing those thought patterns and making a conscious choice about how we respond.
Speaking of practice, there's that story in The Power of Now about the Zen master and his student.
Oh, yeah, the one where he keeps hitting the student with a stick.
That's the one.
Yeah.
It's a pretty funny image,
Yeah.
but it makes a good point about what it means to be truly present.
Right. It's about being completely alert and responsive to whatever's happening in the present moment, not lost in your own head.
It's interesting, though, because it's a different kind of alertness than just reacting to things in your environment. It's also about being aware of what's happening internally.
Absolutely. And that's where Tolle introduces the concept of the inner body.
Inner body. So we're not just talking about physical sensations here.
Right. It's more subtle than that. It's this deep sense of stillness and presence that's always accessible to us, no matter what's going on in our minds or the world around us.
Almost like tapping into a source of inner strength or something.
That's a great way to put it. He talks about conscious breathing, for example. Really paying attention to the sensation of the breath, the way it moves through your body. It's a way to anchor yourself to the present moment and connect with that inner stillness.
Hitting the pause button on all the mental chatter.
Exactly. And from that place of stillness, we can start to observe our thoughts and emotions more objectively, you know, and make choices from a place of greater clarity.
So we're cultivating this inner stillness, learning to kind of ride the waves of our thoughts without getting swept away. It all sounds pretty transformative, but how does this power of now stuff actually play out in our relationships?
It's a great question because Tolle argues that this inner state that we're cultivating is actually the foundation for all our relationships, especially romantic ones.
Okay, so how so?
Well, he tells this really interesting story about a couple who at first they experienced this blissful, all-consuming love.
Right, the honeymoon phase.
Exactly. But over time, things start to change. Their dynamic shifts from this place of pure presence to this need to possess, to control, even to change the other person.
Yeah, I think we've all seen that happen, maybe experience it ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, the initial spark fades, and then you're stuck trying to fit someone into a box that might not even exist.
It's a classic case of the pain body rearing its ugly head. And Tolle's point is that expecting someone else to complete us, to make us whole, is a recipe for disappointment, heartbreak even.
So then how do we approach relationships from this power of now perspective?
It all starts with self-acceptance, embracing our own flaws or insecurities. When we can do that, then we can truly accept others for who they are, not who we want them to be.
There's that freedom of choice thing again.
Yeah.
But this time it's about choosing to really see the good, to accept the wholeness of another person.
Exactly. And recognizing that everyone is on their own journey with their own unique set of experiences. And that includes the people we love most.
It's about letting go of that need to control the outcome, to force things to go our way, which is tough, I'll admit.
It is. It's a practice just like anything else. But Tolle reminds us that even in those tough moments when we feel hurt or threatened, we always have a choice. We can react from that place of fear and insecurity, or we can pause, breathe, tap into that inner stillness and respond with more wisdom and compassion.
So much of what we've talked about today resonates on such a deep level. And if I'm hearing you correctly, it seems like it all boils down to this idea of presence, not just in meditation or being out in nature, but in every aspect of our lives, our thoughts, our emotions, our interactions. It's like this constant practice of waking up to what is.
You nailed it. And I think the most empowering takeaway from the power of now is that this ability to choose presence is always available to us, right here, right now. It's not about achieving some distant state of enlightenment, but about those small conscious choices we make moment by moment to shift our perspective, to embrace the reality of this present breath, this present interaction, this present opportunity to live a more fulfilling and meaningful life.
It's been an incredible deep dive.
Yeah.
I feel like we've just scratched the surface of Tolle's work, but you've given us so much to think about. If there's one thing I'm taking away from this conversation, it's that finding peace, finding joy, even that deeper connection with ourselves and others, it starts with this conscious choice to embrace the power of now.
It's a journey, not a destination.
So true. Thanks for joining us on this journey, and until next time, remember you have the power to choose presence in every single moment.